Well, hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great week. If you are living in Central Florida this past week, well, then you have had a bit of a wet one. So we hope everybody stayed dry, or more importantly, I guess their homes and all of that stayed dry. The rainstorms this past week here in Central Florida have been pretty intense, to say the least. I was on my run on Friday, and I guess I still called it a run, even though these days at my age it's probably more of a plod. The run, or the plod, was almost like an obstacle course, because I had to kind of keep moving around all of the big giant branches from the trees that had fallen down. So it certainly has been several days here this past week where the storms have really been intense. It actually blew a floodlight off of my house as well. So hope you fared a little bit better than that. Central Florida, I mean, I guess that's the privilege or the benefit of living in Central Florida. It is the most active lightning hotspot in North America, as measured by sort of lightning per square mile. Hence, that's why this corridor from like Tampa to Titusville has been nicknamed Lightning Alley, because on average, that zone, so think of that sort of that swath, if you will, across the peninsula of Florida, right there kind of in the middle with Orlando right smack in the middle of that zone or that swath, 56 lightning strikes per every square mile annually. 56 lightning strikes per square mile annually, with about 90% of those occurring between May and October, sort of between noon and midnight. And the reason I know it's thunder season and lightning season here in Central Florida is I have a border collie, and he's getting up there a little bit in age. And if you know border collies, you ever had a border collie, you know they're very much a herd dog, a very kind of a little bit high strung, maybe not the best choice with three young boys, but that's probably a different story for a different program down the road. But they really don't like, or he does not like, these storms. He's an excellent meteorologist, though, because I know when the barometric pressure changes, because that dog starts acting very different when all of that is happening. So I sort of know when the storms are going, so I don't even have to turn on the weather app or anything like that. I just, watch the dog. But anyway, so he knows May to October is when most of those lightning strikes happen, because that's really his worst time of the year. Anyway, I guess there's some analogies, right, between lightning and what we see happening in terms of the market, right? When you think about lightning and storms, well, it's good to be informed, right? I mean, you can't really rely on the dog to kind of give you the meteorological prediction for the future, although he is pretty accurate. And so you would seek out good information in terms of the weather. And obviously there's things that you would do if you saw a big storm coming, right? You would probably kind of batten down the hatches and pick up the loose items around the outside the house, and maybe trim up some of those branches that kind of looked a little weak. The reality is that the market and planning your finances certainly has that same analogy. There's a certain level of unpredictableness to it when you think about the weather and when you think about investing, but there's certainly some things that, if you are informed about, allow you to make the best possible decisions at the time. So I guess that's sort of helping you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. And there we go. There's the name of the program, Dollars and Cents. Welcome to the program. My name, of course, is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, where, of course, we've got a great team of folks, also certified financial fiduciaries. You're going to be hearing more from them here next month because we're going to be doing some traveling and be out of pocket. So they're going to be hosting the show. If you're a regular listener to the program, you know that they've certainly hosted many times before when we've been out of town. Their role when they're not hosting the show in my absence is, of course, to help you and the rest of our clients at Nelson Financial Planning improve your life with some cost-effective and successful financial planning strategies. So if you've got questions about anything that we talk about on the program, or if you've got a topic that you want us to talk about, well, that's what we're here for as well. So just go to our website, nelsonfinancialplanning.com, and ask us those questions through our Contact Us box. It'll ask you to kind of verify that you're actually a human, give you a simple math problem to do. It's like 1 and 1. So hopefully, ace that, and then you can ask us whatever it is that is on your mind, along with maybe a topic that you'd like to hear us discuss on the program. While there, make sure you go to our social media channels and our various YouTube channel as well, and make sure you subscribe once you are there. So excited to sort of get to our program today, the meat of the program, if you will. Enough about the weather, right? A lot of stuff to talk about today. We're going to get to the health savings account. We talked about teased that a little bit last week, but unfortunately we ran out of time. So we're going to make sure that we kind of tackle that one right out of the gate. But before we do that, we talked about last week sort of this flip, if you will, from the bear market to the bull market. It was something that actually technically happened a couple weeks ago. And really it goes back to the technical definitions of what a bull market is versus a bear market. So a bear market measured by a 20% decline from a peak. You get out of a bear market when the market rises by at least 20% from the low of that period of decline. Well, lo and behold, effective a couple weeks ago, the markets had broken that threshold. So that sort of flips the analysis from, okay, we were in a bear market, but now we are in a bull market, at least from a technical definition point of view. I understand that you may not feel that way, particularly if you've still got your 2022 calendar statement handy. If you're looking at that, you may say, well, I don't necessarily feel all that great. But if you look at where you are so far this year actually has been a little bit, or actually quite a bit of an improvement in terms of those values. And so what's interesting is that when you think about markets going up or markets going down, there's almost a little bit of a increased desire to check your account balances. And so we're going to talk about kind of the frequency with which people generally check and why that can be a bad idea, not just in down markets, but also in up markets. Because certainly we get it, right? I mean, when you want to see what's going on, we understand the natural tendency to want to check those account balances, right? I mean, who doesn't like seeing green arrows rather than the red ones, right? I mean, we've all been there, and the reality is that our human nature, our curiosity, if you will, says that we want to check things on a regular basis, and maybe even more so when things are going better. Certainly our phones make it super easy to do that, right? Well, there's actually some interesting stats on how that might be costing you, and we're going to talk about that coming up next here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning. We're talking about the frequency with which we as humans sort of check our balances and why that may not be such a great idea. Certainly, it's understandable, right? I mean, you all want to kind of see how things are going. And that tendency to want to check things actually, that studies have found, is a little bit higher when things are going better. Because, you check, you see the green arrows and it's not red, and that makes you feel good. And you get that quick sort of dopamine hit of, hey, wow, look at that number. And sometimes that can sort of be common habit forming, right? And if that is become habit forming, then perhaps it may mean that you're taking some riskier moves with your money than you should, right? You find yourself on this emotional roller coaster. Understandably, when market's down, and this advice is somewhat decent advice, a lot of folks will say, I'm just not going to look. And that's probably not a bad idea, particularly when the markets are down, because a lot of people try and avoid sort of that unpleasant news. I guess the psychological description of what that is known as the ostrich effect, right? You stick your head in the sand and you kind of ignore everything, which, as a side note, it kind of gives you the impression that the ostrich is sort of a docile creature, and it is not. Years ago, so this was probably 25 years ago, I actually had an opportunity to ride an ostrich, and I don't think you can do that anymore. Matter of fact, I think we went back to that same spot probably 5 years or so ago, and no, you can't do that anymore. But anyway, 25 years ago, you do kind of more things than what you can do now, and so rode an ostrich, yeah, they're not exactly docile, head in the sand creatures, even though the kind of putting your head in the sand like an ostrich is like that common expression. The reality is that they actually are kind of angry birds and have much greater speed, and as you might well imagine, are kind of difficult to ride anyway. But anyway, the ostrich effect is what it's called, even though the ostrich doesn't actually behave like that. But that's sort of when the markets are down. What's interesting, though, is that when the markets are up, people actually check more their account balances. And again, that's human nature, the dopamine hit, the green arrow versus the red arrow, all of that is great. But the problem is that can also lead to some bad decisions. There's some cost involved in that. And what that means is that you wind up sort of chasing those higher returns, right? So you've got green arrows and they're saying, oh, you're up, 5%. But then you kind of look through and, oh, wait, there's this other thing over here that's up like 20%. I'm going to go to that. And what you do when you do that is ultimately you wind up creating a riskier portfolio. Here's the real big issue that studies have sort of confirmed, and this actually comes out of a study from Vanguard as well. And the numbers are really kind of surprising. And I think it underscores how tethered we are to our phones, right? I mean, that thing is on us constantly. It's constantly giving us feedback. It's also constantly listening as well, but that's a whole nother conversation. And when you look at just how easy it is to check your balances, the folks at Vanguard determined that if you're checking your balances on your phone, you're going to check them 25 times on average, okay, versus 10 times if you are logging in from your computer. So basically, if you're accessing that information from your phone, you're going to check it 2.5 times more than if you were just using a laptop or something like that. Here's the real cost, and here's the numbers that really bear repeating and bear focus on. The more people look at their returns, the lower their long-term returns are going to be, based upon two separate distinct studies that have recently come out. Let me just say that again. The more you look, the lower your return. Fully confirmed by a series of studies that have been done. So perhaps you really need to be thinking about what you're doing, right? Understandably so. It's your future. It's your money. We all want to look, make sure the balance is where we would like it to be. Part of the problem, though, is that if you get to the point where you're having a sizable balance and the market swings by 1%, then if you've got $500,000 in your 401k, well, you could see that swing by like $5,000 in a particular day. It's not uncommon that the market swings by 1% in a particular single day. And then here's the problem, right? You start to equate that $5,000 to, what could that $5,000 have done for me? I mean, we could have gone on a weekend getaway. We could have trip, could have done this. And so that's what I describe in the office to folks as, well, the problem is that you've got a good bit of money, right? If you got a good bit of money and the market's swinging by a little percentage, then you're going to see in absolute dollars a much greater impact on that. So that's one of those things I always kind of caution people to not get too hung up on the absolute dollar, particularly as you see those balances grow up, increase. Because at the end of the day, if you think about the markets on a daily basis, nearly half the time, 46% of the time, they're going to be in the red. That's the daily performance of the markets over the course of the past 100 years. But if you pull that back and only look like once a year, then you're only going to see red 25% of the time, and you'll see green 75% of the time. So that gets us to our solution, if you will, to this problem, and how you can avoid that cost of having lower returns because you checked your account too often. Set a schedule. Set a schedule for checking your 401k. Set a schedule for checking your other investments. Oftentimes we recommend on a quarterly. Excuse me, I don't think I've ever done that during the middle of the show. Excuse me. And so, quarterly, but at least annually. And if you have an advisor, that's certainly one of those things that we would recommend. You want to certainly be visiting with them at least once a year, preferably twice, particularly if you're getting close to retirement. That's when you really kind of want to step up those conversations. And then, of course, you want to have a financial plan, right? So how about it? How often are you checking your balance? Do you know what your goals are, what you're really trying to achieve? And when was the last time you chatted with your advisor? So certainly some things to be thinking about, particularly as we think about the markets and that basic human behavior of people checking their balances. So anyway, this course is Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. We're one of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, coming to you on a host of radio stations throughout the Central Florida region. Also happen to be one of the top 25 financial planning podcasts on the World Wide Web. So make sure you subscribe to us there on whatever your favorite channel or platform is. Any trouble finding us, go to our website, Nelson Financial Planning. Upper right-hand corner, you'll see the icons. They'll connect you directly to the channels, including YouTube. While there, make sure you subscribe so you know when we upload new content. Also, while you're there, don't forget to fill out the Contact Us box if you've got any questions or any particular topics that you might like to hear us talk about on the program. We've obviously got a catalog of episodes and shows that we've done over the years out there on our various podcast platform channels, and there's probably pretty much every topic out there, but maybe one of those needs a refresh. So don't hesitate to reach out to us if you've got a topic that you want to hear us talk about on the program. My name, of course, is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner and a certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, where we got a team of great folks, all of whom happen to be certified financial fiduciaries, who stand ready this week to help you change your life with a successful and cost-effective financial plan. Okay, so without further ado, well, we got to take a break first, so there is going to be further ado. But when we return, we're going to talk about one of the most powerful and misunderstood ways to save money that ultimately helps you with the ever-rising costs of your out-of-pocket medical expenses. Coming up next here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning. One of the most powerful vehicles to save money just got even more powerful. Unfortunately, many Americans don't really know what these accounts actually do, how they work, and these accounts are quite misunderstood to many people. What we're talking about, of course, is a health savings account. There's a lot of money in them already. About $112 billion of American hard-earned cash is sitting in them. So that probably seems like a big number, but that's the total balance that is in them. across this country, Americans spend 400 billion, 400 out of pocket, 400 billion every year on healthcare expenses, on out-of-pocket healthcare expenses. So understand those numbers a little bit more. So you got 112 billion that's sitting in basically 37 million HSA health savings accounts across this country. But then every year we're spending 400 billion on those out-of-pockets expenses. So there's clearly an underutilization of health savings accounts across this country, because most people don't quite understand or don't realize the features or don't miss out sort of on the opportunity. So in this segment of the program, we're going to talk more about, we'll talk about what they are and how they work, and understand how they have become even more powerful than what they were. So welcome on into the program. This, of course, is Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, also a top 25 financial planning podcast on the big wide world web. My name is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, where we help hard-working folks to do good things with their money. So if you're in need of help, go to our website, Nelson Financial Planning, fill out the Contact Us box, and let us know how we can help you. So health savings accounts. Here's sort of the big headlines, and it's really one of those more overlooked or misunderstood type of accounts. And so we want to start by first sort of explaining kind of what it is. And one of the reasons why a health savings account is as powerful as it is, it literally has a triple threat, if you will, of tax savings. So when you put the money in, you get a tax deduction for it. That's number one. Along the way, if you're not using the account, it grows on a tax-free basis. That's number two. And then lastly, when you use the money in that account for medical expenses, then all of those withdrawals, if they're used for qualified eligible healthcare expenses, are tax-free. That's number three. So there's your triple threat that the health savings account ultimately represents. Eligible medical expenses can be anything from your Medicare Part B premiums to your deductibles, your copays, your vision, your dental, your hearing, even long-term care. So the one caveat that you need to know if you want to set up a health savings account is that you must have a high deductible health insurance plan that allows you to have the eligibility for the health savings account, right? So you can't have an HSA with just any type of health insurance plan. It has to be specifically an eligible high deductible health insurance plan. So the reality is, though, that they are so powerful that we're seeing more and more employers kind of adopt these eligible high deductible insurance plans that give people an opportunity to have a health savings account. Because if you stop and think about sort of the tax benefits that come with an HSA, it's basically like walking around with a 22% off coupon in your pocket every time you go to the dentist or the eye doctor or go for hearing or any out-of-pocket medical expenses, because if you're in the 22% tax bracket, right, and you get the tax deduction, then that's 22% off. So it really is like you're walking around with like a 22% off kind of coupon. Now, HSAs also have some great options in terms of being able to either use it immediately for expenses. So you put the money in, and then let's say the next month you're going to the dentist and you turn around and take the money right back out. Fantastic. You still wound up ahead by 22%, assuming that that is your tax bracket. Now, if you don't have to use all of that money, then you can actually invest it. And usually within HSAs, there'll be different types of investment options that you can do inside of that HSA. And that, I guess, is the big difference. And I guess where the big confusion comes into play is that most people think, oh, I got to use it or I lose it. Because there's other types of plans, usually flex plans or things like that, where you have to use it by the end of the year or else you lose that money. But HSAs, see, the flex plans have been around much longer than the HSAs. And everybody kind of thinks that the HSAs operate the same as the flex plans, but they really don't. The flex plans, you got to use it or you lose it. HSAs, though, very, very different. If you don't use it, you can continue to carry it forward to future years and ultimately have that excess balance be invested to grow. And even when you get to retirement, to use it for retirement as well. So that's the background on HSAs. What's the big news that has made those more powerful than ever before? Well, the big news actually comes courtesy of the IRS. Who knew that they were going to have good news for the taxpayer? But they do in the form of much higher contribution limits that just got announced for the year 2024. So for 2024, so not 2023, 2024, the maximum HSA contribution is going to be $8,300 for a family, $4,150 for an individual. This year's numbers are for a family, $7,750 and $3,850 for an individual. So a nice little bump from this year to next year in terms of how much you can fund. Remember, that's all tax deductible. Now, if you're over age 55, you also get to put in an extra $1,000 per person. So for a couple over age 55, you could literally put in $10,300 into an HSA in based upon next year's contribution level. So very powerful vehicle that ultimately really is like you walking around with a 22% off coupon when it comes to your out-of-pocket expenses. And certainly when you think about those numbers, there's really not there's an underutilization, right? If Americans are spending $400 billion a year on out-of-pocket medical expenses each and every year, and there's only $112 billion in HSAs to begin with, then it would seem to me then that's clearly underutilization. So, but let's come back to the caveat, and this is really what you need to know. So this is the key piece. Remember, in order to have a health savings account, you need to have an eligible high deductible health insurance plan, right? So obviously for most people, they get their health insurance through their employer. Here's sort of the to-do list, if you will. Ask your employer or whoever you have your health insurance with, if you're self-purchasing it, ask your provider if they offer an option for that high deductible health insurance policy. Because if they do, then that's how you can get an HSA. And that's the only way you can get an HSA. So in order to get the triple threat tax savings that comes with an HSA, in order to have that account be, that money in that account be continuing to provide you with money even in retirement, then you need to have that high deductible plan. So make sure you take the time, particularly if you're coming up on sort of selecting the benefits, things like that, to really ask those questions about what the options are with your health insurance. Because if there's a high deductible insurance plan, you really want to take a look at that in order to be able to have those health savings accounts, which are really pretty powerful. With that, we will take a break and continue here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning. Welcome back into the program, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you're all having a great week, staying dry. My goodness, it certainly has been a wet one here in Lightning Alley, as we were talking about earlier on the program. My name, of course, is Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary at Nelson Financial Planning, where we got a team of great folks. You're going to be hearing from them coming up, not next week, but the following week and the week after that, as they host the program in my absence. You've certainly heard from them before for in previous episodes. But the trifecta of Rob, Kristen, and Christina will be kind of tackling some shows in my absence as we do a little bit of traveling during the course of the summer months. Hope you also are having the opportunity to travel and enjoy family and friends and didn't get too rained on this past week. Well, on the program, as we like to do, we like to try and make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. And certainly earlier in the program, we were talking about the propensity of folks to look at their phones and check their balances and why that's not a good idea. Studies have found, in fact, that when you do that, then you wind up underperforming and reduce your return over time. And then in the prior segment, we were talking about those triple threat health savings account. Definitely want to check into that with your employer to see, assuming that that's where you get your health insurance from, to see if that's an option for you. So in this last segment, we're going to talk about our most recent blog post that we did on our website. If you would like to get the full version of the blog post, well, then go to our website, nelsonfinancialplanning.com. While there, you'll see a little box that says From the Desk of Joel Garris. That's the blog post that we do. We do about a blog post about every month, and then we usually try and also talk about it on the program. So make sure you're checking out our blog posts as well. If you're at our website, feel free to contact us because we want to hear from you. We want to hear from you whether you've got questions about anything that we've talked about on the program, or maybe it's something that you need us to talk about on the program just for some continuing education purposes. So that, after all, is what this program is all about. One of Central Florida's longest running radio programs, in fact, talking about all kinds of financial stuff over the years, going back to the late 80s when it was my father-in-law, Jack Nelson, doing the program, and then he and I did it for a number of years, and then for the better part of the past decade plus, it's just been me sitting here in front of the microphone. But now we get other members of the team at Nelson Financial Planning to host and co-host from time to time. So anyway, the blog post. So here's the topic. It's one that you hear a lot about, and it has to deal with digital currency and this sort of conversation out there about the end of the U.S. dollar. And I guess part of the reaction that I always have to this conversation is that, well, when we think about digital currency, the cat's kind of out of the bag already on that, right? That's not new. I mean, when you use a credit card, that's kind of a form of digital currency, right? I mean, you're not giving the cashier cash, right? My wife and I were out this past week to a restaurant, and we selected the restaurant based upon the fact that my youngest son, Connor, happens to be a waiter there. So I don't know if you've ever had that experience with one of your kids where it's kind of a little odd, right? Because here you are, this once was a little kid, now not such a little kid anymore, and he's serving drinks and serving food and all that kind of stuff. And so just kind of an odd experience, if you will. Food was good. He did a great job serving. So that's good, and such a great experience to have for a summer job, because he'll return back to Boston and back to school at Northeastern in the fall. But so we paid for it. I didn't take out dollar bills from my wallet. I paid for it with a credit card, right? So, and when you use credit cards, that's kind of a digital form of payment, right? And if you've ever used any of these apps like Venmo or Zelle, then you know that that's not people exchanging dollars. That's people exchanging really kind of more digital currency. So the cat's kind of out of the bag, if you will, on digital currency. You're not going to stuff that thing back in there. It's just far too convenient. There's a generation of kids growing up using that stuff on a regular basis. But here's where the disconnect comes in. And this is where I think the reality of what's happening skews over into kind of almost crazy land, if you think about it, because a lot of people are out there talking about, well, this digital currency, it's going to spell the end of the dollar. Actually, it almost seems like every week or two I get this question from our clients, and lo and behold, this question came up this past week, and I'm like, well, go to the blog post, because then you've got the whole breakdown in terms of our thoughts and views on that, because that's where the disconnect is. So it's one thing to talk about digital currency. It's a whole other thing to say, well, the dollar's going to be gone. Well, no. Okay. Digital currency, certainly, no question, here to stay, but that doesn't mean the evaporation of the U.S. dollar, right? So when you put down a credit card, or you use Zelle or Venmo, or whatever the cash app is that you're doing, you're moving U.S. dollars in digital form. It's not paper form, after all. You're not, giving the person, $100. It's digital. So that's here to stay. But that transaction is still denominated in U.S. dollars. And I think that's where the sort of the disconnect comes in. It's it's going to all make the dollar disappear. No, it's going to be denominated in U.S. dollars, much like it is now. Whenever you use a cashless transaction or digital currency, it's denominated in U.S. dollars. So these folks are there to talk about, it's just a complete disconnect from what actually is happening every single day. And then there's this other group of folks that say, the BRIC countries, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, they're all going to get together. They're going to create their own currency, and that's going to rival the U.S. dollar. And in fact, if you actually look at the headlines, when they set up a bank, and it was about 10 years ago, and it was the New Development Bank. It was a development bank that really was intended to, put them in position to challenge. Well, here's the latest news on that development bank, and this comes to us through the Wall Street Journal just this past week. It basically has stopped making loans because it's in such bad shape. So not really sure we're going to get much competition on that level. When you think about the dollar as the world's reserve currency, 90% of all foreign exchange transactions are denominated in dollars. The percentage of that has only been maintaining the same amount as it always has. And in fact, if you think about COVID and the extent to which the dollar was relied on for the world's reserve currency, there really is no comparison. So anyway, you want to listen, have a little bit more to read and learn about our view on the digital currency and the dollar, check out our blog post on our website at Nelson Financial Planning. Also talk about a little bit of the things in the blog post about retirement and some of the things that you need to be thinking about for retirement as well. So check out the blog post because that's about all for this week's episode of Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning. If you like what you heard and want to learn more of how our team of certified financial fiduciaries at Nelson Financial Planning can help you, go to our website, Nelson Financial Planning, or give us a call at 407-629-6477. Have a great rest of your week.